Okay, here we go. So what'd you learn? Life can be good. All right, Alan, what'd you learn?
More to life than real estate.
There's more to life than real estate. Did anybody else say that? Does anyone else struggle with that? Just Alan and me? Okay. I do like no. All right, what else? Really? That's good. Are you coming by?
Can't hear.
He said it wasn't good. What else?
Like by design.
That a baby. Yeah, baby's a good one. Like that. All right.
We heard a true, one of those true stories I love to hear of a true life by design that's powered by real estate. And learning that balance and being okay with the balance.
Yep.
Versus real estate's everything.
Love it. Love it. Love it. What else? Yes.
Other than not dying, just releasing things.
Releasing things. Not dying is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody today.
Yeah. It's a good start.
Last
It's a
year.
good, yeah, it's a good start. But yeah, releasing things. I like that. What else? Give me two more. And if you know Lisa, you know that was a really hard thing to share with a good thing.
Yeah.
Lisa's not doing well with her daughter. So that I'm glad that we've moved to that. That's awesome. Congratulations. All right, one more. Yes.
I think a good work-life balance, I think Alan said that, but I mean, just really learning that
Nice.
work isn't what drives me.
Right. Love that. Love that. Kathy, did you have one?
Yeah, keep grandma. My oldest son who had his birth when he's 46.
All right.
Yeah, think about that, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. That's gonna be fun. All right.
And by your third at 46.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a friend of ours who had their third child in their mid-40s last year. That's their next youngest was 10. So that was fun. All right, one more. Good job. Another one, progression, right? That's a good thing because at first that probably was a struggle. All right. So let's talk about the market. Let's talk about these stats. Why is it important to kind of dissect these and know how to translate them?
What?
Why is it important to know the market and know how to translate it? So you're not stupid. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes.
But you can speak louder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. You can speak louder than the media or louder than the experts, right? The experts. And-
The market changed so much.
Yeah.
A lot of people still think it's 2 to 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Today's gonna give you tremendous amount of tools to have that discussion, Alan.
Better be the local experts.
You've got to. You've got to. All right. So jump to slide 3 really quickly. It's on the second page, or right?
We gotta share the screen for the Zoom.
Got a little technology thing.
Where's the? Share the screen.
Okay. All right, so I love some of these, and by the way, I know it's small. Go ahead and that feedback has been received, right? You'll get the full one, but I love some of these dialogues on the bottom of this page on slide 3. These are conversations to have with your client, right? And I think the challenge, there are two types of people in the room. You've got one side of the room that's already gone through every slide that's in front of them, analyzed it, created questions, they understand it, the question half of it, saying, well, is this really true? They know how to read every bit of it. Then there's the other side of the room that is like, I don't know if I'm going to make it an hour and a half of stats. Right? Anybody fall into one of those categories? Right. The purpose of today is to understand how to have this conversation with your clients, because like it or not, you're going to have to know these to be the expert of choice that Alan talked about. So I love some of these dialogues. The first one, because the price and condition account for 80% of buyer interest and acceptance for any property, we need to spend time talking about the information we have and how it helps to present your house in the best possible way to meet your goals. You're setting your client up for what I said earlier, which is, I'm just going to share the information with you so you can then make a decision. And I already know, because I already know the questions that are going to come. Well, what about this situation? What about that situation? There's always going to be this or that situation. There's always going to be this or that client that is going to say, well, my house. and I'm gonna do this, and I appreciate that everything that you showed me is perfectly accurate, I'm still gonna go this way. And then you get to make the decision whether or not you wanna get into business with them. It's just that easy, right? Next one. Neither of us can dictate the price at which your home will sell. The market will determine the price that the buyers are willing to pay. My job is to explain the current market and how affecting sellers' pricing strategies now, so that we can jointly decide how to position your house to meet your goals. It's a collaborative discussion. Jumping down the next one is good. The third one is good as far as it relates to setting yourself aside from where you got the data. Because this is going to look very different than what they're probably seeing if you're competing. Or should I say when you're competing? All right, but I love this last one. Rather than emotion, guesswork, or assertions, to arrive at your listing price, when you and I are together, understand the real Greater Charleston Tri-County, Cane Bay, Nexton, insert here, whatever it may be, right? Showing Cane Bay was a big topic on Wednesday, by the way. Do we have any Cane Bay survivors right now? Like PTSD with Cane Bay pricing, right? Yeah. We'll get through it. Right? Showing what happens to the other sellers in the current market, it reveals the most likely outcome of pricing strategies. That's such an important thing to say to the client. It reveals the most likely outcome. Not a crystal ball, but it's pretty close to dictating what the most likely outcome is. Using overall metro market statistics provides us with a large enough data. This is where some of you are like, well, Cane Bay. And understanding that knowing the metro market gives you the largest amount of data to give you the most accurate information of the trend. Provides a large enough data set to a real outcome to feel comfortable that they will likely happen in future transactions, allowing us to take advantage of this knowledge to price your property to achieve your goals. So give me some ahas so far.
This sets it up as a partnership,
Yeah,
and then using the market determines what the price it's gonna sell for, that takes it off of you.
yeah,
Where it's like, guys, this is why we're talking about this is what the market is giving us.
Mhm.
It's not our marketing and showability and price, that can do so much.
Right.
But the market will determine what the house sells for.
Yeah.
And that could be other active listings, that could be fire sales happening. I
Mhm.
mean, there's so much that goes into that. So I think that really helps.
love it. Shakima.
That is expectations out front, you know, we're probably gonna have multiple prices.
Yeah, setting the expectations for the pricing conversation. Here's what I like the most about it. What I love about it is kind of what Lane was saying, is like it's me and you versus the market. This isn't me versus you in pricing. Right? This is me and you versus the market. So it sets that standard. Anything you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I think one of the best things about this is numbers tell a story, right? So when we can understand the trends and the patterns within the numbers, we're understanding what the psychology of the market, the people, right, that are making decisions have. So then I can use that information and appreciate, hey, this is how we should, this is what you want, Mr. Seller or Mr. Buyer, and this is what the market is saying it's going to do and what it wants. Let's mend those things together. So using the story and of the numbers, or that the numbers are creating, can help us understand the psychology of the buyer and seller. Yeah.
One thing I like about it too is the way that this is scripted, the way that this is posed for us to learn. It also, I think if you use it, it reminds the agent to get back to asking them, what is that pain point for you? I mean, I think we get so caught up in trying to tell, which is good to be the expert. At some point you have to stop and say, so let's go back to your needs analysis. What is your timeline? What is your pain point? Is it holdings? Could you rent? Could you be a property manager? And so I just think this has a lot, it makes the agent then have to ask them to engage in the conversation.
Yeah. That's why I love that line. It says your goals that are in there.
And when you have numbers like this and true facts, right? Because there's a lot of misinformation out in the world. There's a ton, especially in real estate, right? Well, we have to be that lighthouse, so to speak, in the storm for our clients. And when we have data, hard data like this, there's a lot for us to stand on. So my coach always says, when you're the most educated on a particular subject, no one can pull the wool over your eyes. And that's what we have to do for our clients because there's just so much misinformation out there. And it's made it difficult because of optionality for them to act. So even when we're gonna go through some of these numbers, but you'll see from the standpoint of price reductions, why price reductions have such a massive impact on days on market or how much they're actually going to net. But you can also appreciate that that's all based off of what they expect from a sales price in the past, not today. And those things have changed. Using the numbers is a lot easier than just using emotion.
So the data that you have in here, so the ones we're gonna go through today is gonna be for single family detached. You'll get a report for both detached as well as townhomes and condos. So you'll have both of them. The reason that separation was made, because again, I want you to look at it from a standpoint of, we're gonna be looking at the metro view, right? You've got the macro view, you've got the micro view. This is gonna be the metro view. Where you're gonna go into specifics and neighborhoods, you're probably not gonna get as granular as this report is. Yet you still use the report as it relates to kind of the mentality and the thought process around it. A couple things for those data nerds that are already looking on the MLS to confirm the data. I see you. Couple things. So because it won't be as much in this report, but each quarter, we're gonna pull it within the first week or two. So the report other information will come in after that data has been reported. So there may be some fluctuation as we start to do this on a quarterly basis. So just keep in mind on that, right? Yet at the end of the day, that's why we stay at the metro view, because it's still going to give us a large subset of numbers to go through. So when you get the report and you can see it in front of you, here's the agenda of it. Here's what we're going to go through today. It is going to be hyperlinked. So if you're doing this in front of your client, you can click on each one of these. It'll jump to the specific slide. The report, the reason we didn't send it out ahead of time is there was 1 or 2 adjustments we had to make, and I'll tell you what those are while we're in there. But the accurate one came in this morning, so you guys will get it this afternoon. But basically, this is what we're going to go through. We're going to go through market share. So we can see that's going to be kind of a little self-reflection, right? What we're doing as an organization. We today are going to go even further into that, is what you guys are doing as agents, because I think it's super important to look at that. We're going to look at some quick stats that are going to start the conversation. And then we're going to spend a lot of time on these key metrics that are going to be really dive into pricing. And it's going to create some great conversations in there. Talk about what it's like to get 100% of list price right now. Are there homes out there still getting 100% of list price? Yeah, there are. Are there homes that are getting only 93% of list price? Almost half of them. Right? And these are things that we need to be able to share. And then we're going to go into kind of what concessions look like. Again, it's all about setting expectations. We'll talk a little bit of financing, summarize it, get some action plans, and get out of here. Does that sound good? That'll get us out of here about 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. Okay. Cool. All right, so let's talk market share. Again, this is for single family detached. This is an interesting number. It's the same jokes over and over. And some of you are like, move on. So this is 2024 Q4 of 2024. This is single family detached. So we're solidly in second for market shares as it relates to the number of homes sold, which comes 100% from y'all's, not 100%, a majority of it and a large portion of it comes from y'all's increase in business. These next couple stats are really fascinating, and it's important to know these. So the second one is not going to be in your material, and it's not in front of you, because I like to talk about this as an organization and our little fun family time right now. I don't necessarily love these types of stats to go to public, because the point of this is not a nana and a boo-boo. The point of this is just to look to see what's working. So what the chart up on the screen shows, and you don't have it in front of you, but what this shows is what the growth in market share has been since 2018 per company. Okay. And what's interesting about it is from where does this growth come? And that's why it's important to have this discussion here. So if you look at the first 3 years of these 6 years, you see a lot of growth from some of the companies that are in the 9th and 10th space. And a lot of those came from agent growth, meaning agents joined their company. So if the company is at X production, they go recruit in Y production, X plus Y is greater, right? That's where the majority of that came from. And the latter 3 years of this, the companies that grew steadily, the two being Carolina One and us, that grew steadily, if you look at the stats, the majority of that growth came from internal agent growth. That's important to know. I'm going to show you a stat in a minute that's actually pretty staggering. That's not to say that we don't still grow with agents joining, but this is showing what you guys are doing with your production here. And what it's telling me is that the companies that are focused on agent service are the ones that are growing. I'm not saying negative about anybody other than the ones that are growing, right? I'm only saying positive about the ones that are growing. Okay, does that make sense? Anything you want to jump in on that?
And there's only two companies that grew over the last year, right? From a market share perspective, it was Keller Williams and Carolina One. Carolina One over the last 5 years has decreased in market share substantially, while Keller Williams increased. So there's a lot of things that we can look at and say, do we like, do we not? What can we change? How do we hit the skinny pedal on the curve, right? The other piece to this puzzle is, KW grew by 4.8% market share, while Carolina One grew by 2% or 2.2%, right? Those are the only two brokerages that grew year over year, majority of it coming from internal agent production, which is a really positive conversation, right? So it's something to be, I guess, aware of. And you can see the difference in 2021 in the red line. So much of the production and much of the market share growth from 2021 to 2022 actually happened because of recruited production. And then it stabilized and continued growth through internal agent production. You can see it in the charts, right? So the intention is to keep that growing.
Yeah, 100%.
Also know what happened at Carolina One, first of all, the production dropped, and then now the turning around in the last year, so that those lessons learned to help us.
Great point. And what that is, it goes to what Vince just said. The reason that it was hard, and even Keller Williams, it wasn't internal agent growth that went down. It was the fact that you had a lot of these people, if you look at the two down here with our EXP and whatever the other line, I don't know what they are. Boulevard. Those were growing at that time because agents were moving to that company. So that's what it was there. It was, how are we attracting more agents to come in? If you look at the per agent productivity in all of these, I go back to the only ones that grew in per agent productivity were Carolina One and Keller Williams.
And then what happened that, what's turning it around now? Any intel on that?
That is held per agent productivity. So they held per agent productivity because their growth in agent coming in was not much. It was actually less than, say, ours if we're comparing those. So what that's telling us is they held on that. And then also what's also happening is market share went down. Look at how many people where market share went down, right? So what that's telling you is that market share had to go somewhere. It's not that the market went down, the share went down. So as all of those were going down, that means that business itself were coming to the full service agents. That standpoint. Make sense? All right. So again, we talk about this for this discussion. I'm begging you that when you go out and you say compared to markets or to other companies, this is the one you use. This is a static, here's where we are. You know, we're working with strong market share here. This number can get skewed and misused. And the last thing that I want to do for the organization is have it be, look at bad, we're good. That's not the purpose of this section, right? Here's the next step. It's pretty awesome. It's not as fancy of a slide, but I threw it in here. So this is why this is happening for us right now. So I know it's blurry. I know it's not great, whatever. So what this is an average of our agents' internal growth, right? We didn't want to take to say, okay, in 2021, or 2023, what did the organization do versus 24? Because that factors in recruiting, right, and growth. I want to know, what did you guys do individually? And what this is on average, the agents in our organization year over year grew 35.69% in the number of homes that you sold. That's pretty awesome. Give yourself a hand. Yeah. Everybody's like, well, what about the 0 to 1? We took the zeros out, meaning anybody who did not have a closing in 2023, we didn't put that number in there because it's just going to skew the number and make it. But we did not remove those who then did not have any closings or went down or anything like that in 2024, because that would be a good indication of what the trend is. So it's 35.69% in units and then almost 80% in volume, right? Does anybody know what the market did in that same time frame? I just mean overall units. So units year over year. Anybody know what happened to units from 2023 to 2024 overall? They stabilized. There's some stats that say up 1%. The quarterly stat says down 0.5%, right? So it's pretty stable. So that's a huge jump for us. And then does anybody know what the volume did? Not price, volume. What did the volume do? It went up. It was about 11%. 11%, yeah, total on that. So this is just something to be proud of. Y'all's hard work crushed it. Give me some ahas. There's a lot of business out there. What did Ben say on Ben made a really good point on this in the mastermind. When we're going out and growing the business, the 3 top companies have 22.7. The 3 top companies only have a quarter of the market. There's plenty of market out there to go get. Right? It's a super important one. What else?
And a way to think about that 35%, sometimes percentages can be goofy, right? For every 10 homes that our agent base sold last year, they sold 3.5, 3.6 more this year, right? Now translate to dollars. 3.5, let's call it 4. What's the average GCI per unit? 10 grand, 10 to 11 grand. That's 35 grand, right? How does that make your life different? Well, that's the story.
Yeah.
Right? 35% sounds really good, but what does it actually mean? It means that we made 35 grand more than we did last year.
Yep.
Counting it.
So, all right. So let's start we're going to start 30,000th level. And we're going to keep coming in on these. So these 4 here are basically the big 4 of just kind of what to talk about and what to know about in the business. First one, year to date sales. Again, these are for single family detached. Right. So we're down about 0.5%. Now everybody's like, well, you just said it was leveled at 1. Well, this is just for single family detached and it's just for Q4. Okay, so that's why the number is here. So down 0.5% versus last year. Median sales price up almost 5% versus last year. Again, this is Q4. But if you're looking to see, you've got a steady increase in the median sales price over the last 3 years. Right? Is it what we saw possibly from 2019, 20, and 21? No. Is it healthy though? Yeah, 100%. What can you do with this information? Yes. Right. Yeah, what Shakima said is there's like a whole group of people that are just waiting for the market to crash. Like, or when they come down, and we're gonna show you a slide in a minute of why people actually justify that mindset. Because there's a subset of the micro market where you could say, well, yeah, it's still going down. It's real estate does not. We do stats in 90-day intervals, so we can get a read on that. But real estate in general does not operate only in 90 days as a buyer or a seller, right?
The other thing too is a lot of homeowners think, well, my price has gone up 10%, 20%, 30% than when I bought it. Well,
Right.
not really.
Well, and the challenge is in some markets it did in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And that's, we got a trend line later that talks about that, and it shows you why the market makes the consumer crazy. Right? Because it's like, well, wait, I saw like, it was, I can't remember, we'll get to that number, but that's a great point. Yeah. All right, this one's fun. Bottom left corner, median sales price to list price. The median is 97.5%. That's down 1 point from last year. So in 2022, we were getting a median sales price to list price of 100%. Right? Those were fun days. If you were a listing agent. For those of you that were buyer's agents, we can still see the damage, right? It was crazy. So then we said, okay, the next year went down to 98.6%, now 97.9%. Again, this is an expectation from a macro level. When we break this down, this gets pretty interesting. Yes.
So one thing to note is that if the median is 100, there were a lot that were sold above the 100.
Correct. And they were, and they still can be. It's a great point.
Well, and at 97%, I mean, that's the historic average.
Mhm.
That means that we're right where we should be.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's an interesting, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting all excited. All right. All right, so then the next one down here, the median days on market. This is the fun one. So median days on market, this is where they're feeling some pain.
Yep.
Right? And this is where we've got to bring in some emotional intelligence, right? We can't be the guy that's like, oh, back in my day when we got on the market, it took blah, 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 and raised for this. We got to look at what they're looking from a perspective standpoint. 3 years ago, the house was selling in 6 days. So now we're looking at it, it's like, well, 23, big deal. Like 23 is still, you get a contract in 3 weeks. Well, when it was 6 days, that's 4 times as long. And oh, by the way, they're at the cocktail party with someone who sold back in 6 days. I'm like, well, what's your agent doing?
Yeah.
My house sold in 6 days.
Yep.
And they're like, that's a good point. AJ, what are you doing? All right. So we're gonna break down why that's happening now. All right, what else on this?
One of the things that you can see is that supply and demand are starting to come a little bit more together. Buyer expectations are starting, or seller expectations are still higher than what now buyers are willing to spend. Right, so that's where you're seeing, so you're starting to see this ceiling get created. Right, which is, in my opinion, a great thing. That's a natural, things have to regress to a mean. Right, and price is one of those things that have to regress to a mean. There's a chart in here that I think is fascinating. It looks at quarterly median sales price. And you're gonna see that every fourth quarter it goes down. And every first quarter, depending on the month, January or February, it'll start to go up. Yet it all regresses toward this trend line of about 4%. Right? So my point, when I look at this and I see median sales prices up 4.9%, but sales just year-to-date units are flat. And then I look and I see the days on market have gone up. That's just that's sellers having higher expectations and buyers going to them. Does that make sense?
All right, so let's start breaking these down by price point. And here's where you're gonna get a little more granular when you're having this conversation with your client. Because this is where you kind of take the broad number and you start narrowing it down. Now, for a lot of these discussions, I don't know that we need to get as micro in each market. That's up to you though, in your comfortability level, right? I think when you go in with pricing, you have your pricing. These stats are gonna give you a better subset to share with them. So this is just a breakdown of what it looked like in each one of the price points. Okay, so you've got basically all but 2 of them are up in the number of homes that sold. And where that went down was 250 basically to 400. What's the reason that the number of homes sold in that price point went down? Because the number of homes in that price point went down, right? I mean, the median price going up is going to drive prices out of that bracket, or homes out of that bracket. Right, so that's when you're talking to someone who's in that price point, it doesn't necessarily mean there's less demand for that price point. If anything, you could argue there's more demand for the price point because there's more demand for the buyer. There are more buyers in that price point to go up. So that's something to keep in mind. But for the most part, we're up across the board, and this is when we're up 7.9%. Now, again, this is single family detached Q4.
Interesting to see the bottom. Below 250 grew, and that's quite for soldiers is that they, handyman special. Where are those houses?
Where are those houses? That's a good question.
Revenue.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they're out, right?
Yeah,
They're out.
absolutely.
Sean some.
Well, and like, because DR Horton is now almost entirely out of Charleston County, like they're way out.
Yeah.
And that's where that price point is.
Yep. All right, month supply. What does month supply mean? Yeah, it's the length of time it would take. So right now, if we were to put no more new homes on the market moving forward, it'd take 2.4 months to sell out. What does this tell us? It tells us what the market is, right? Right. Anything less than 6 months of supply, basically telling you that you're still in a seller's market. So a lot of people think that we're moving to a buyer's market, and here's why, because a lot of you are thinking specific neighborhoods. So you do have to be proficient in those specific neighborhoods, but we're still in a really strong seller's market. And it doesn't mean sellers can just put their feet up, because we're definitely not where we were a couple years ago. Right? Yes. Sorry. Thank you.
Something that we've discussed for a couple of years now. Don't you think that, I mean, that 6 months neutral market is arbitrary? I mean, we've talked about it for a long time. I think that the market is such that maybe that neutral market is now maybe 4.5 or more.
I think it's a fair
It
assessment.
feels like it's no longer a seller's market. I don't know what you guys feel, but it does feel like it's no so, the buyers have some leverage.
Yeah,
Well, it is
They-
certainly less of a seller's market.
There's variables.
Has.
Yeah. say that again?
It is certainly less of a seller's market than it has been.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still a seller's market.
Prices are still going up.
Correct, and there's the challenge, right? I think Alan's right. I think the 6, because they used to say 0 to 6 sellers, 6 to 12 is neutral and 12 over is buyers. I don't see us getting to a 12+ month supply of homes, like, I mean, that's like, it's like, oh my God. I'm like flashbacks to 2008, it's like. Maybe, but even so, look at Asheville. Asheville just had some of their best numbers in December they've ever had. So even those things, and here's the difference. And this is why you also kind of have to know on a macro level. We have the highest demand of places of being a place to live as a state. And then internally in the state, we're in the metropolitan area that most people are moving, or we're back and forth with Greenville.
Widespread options too, like I feel. The options for a buyer are so ranging that I feel like buyers are saying, they aren't necessarily saying. The house must be this footprint, they're saying, I can choose one of these 4 footprints. And they can find those in multiple places, and then a good buyer's agent is gonna say, this seller isn't realistic with the pricing, so let's go most house for the least amount of money. That's why this conversation is so dire for your sellers, and going back to how long are you okay sitting? Because we can sit.
Yeah.
Because the days on market are not, quick.
Mhm.
However, if you know that the buyers could decide they're so far outside of what I could get over here, that's the whole thing about the Cane Bay, all that discussion of the ranging of options.
Mhm.
How aggressive should you be inside the range? It's not, it's a different discussion in my opinion, because buyers have more options.
Yeah, well, it was a good segue to the next slide. Yeah, good job, Len. All right. All right, so this one's interesting, and this is where, okay, breathe, everybody put your pens down. Take a deep breath. I will survive the math discussion. Say it internally. Say it internally. These are important numbers to know. So when you have a question, ask the question. What? Ask the question. Thank you, right? Because if you have the question, it's not stupid, because someone else has it as well. But this is where we get in, and I do believe it's incredibly important that we're able to have this discussion. Because what Lynn just said is a good conversation that you need to have with your sellers. So this is the percentage of original list price to our sales price to the original list price, based on price points. 7 out of 8 price ranges decreased in the number of the percentage they were getting of the original list price.
Just the fourth quarter.
Just the 4th quarter. So this is basically the average of homes that sold. When they sold, what was the percentage they have received of their original list price? Okay. So we're seeing a drop pretty much in all areas except for 250 to 300.
What creates that, you think?
Competition.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Competition, it's
There are
demand.
4 of them, yeah.
And if you look at the previous slide, or 2 previous. Yeah, that particular price point is down in units.
Right.
Right, so that shows you that there's more buyers willing to buy in that price point than sellers willing to sell in that price point. Which is gonna show you that there's still a buyer demand higher than that of a seller supply. Right, and then you can see it in the way that the original list price received by sellers shows up a 97.5%. 97.5% of the original list price as compared to 96.5%. And a 1% difference is a substantial amount of money on 400 grand. It's not just $100, right? So that shows, to me, that shows an affordability challenge. Yeah, right? Because all the other spaces have decreased. Yeah. Quarter over quarter.
I was gonna say, do you think that the conversation ever changes to where a buyer's market isn't necessarily a 6 month or a seller's market is this one? And it starts to be based on numbers like this, like a buyer's market is a market where we cannot have to pay full price.
Yeah, which.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like, so the question was,
It's a good question.
yeah, if the conversation ever moved from what determines a buyer's market versus a seller's market, it's less about time on the market or inventory and more about what the buyers are willing to pay. Like, does it become a buyer's market when, if I understand you correctly, does it become a buyer's market when you go out and say, I don't have to pay full price? I think there's a two-part discussion. I think, yes, so there's a very strong argument that you would call that. However, this is what we're gonna get into. I do believe that if priced correctly, there's really never a market where you're not gonna get 100% of what you're asking.
100%.
Right? And that's the discussion we have to have for the most part. Well, yeah,
Well,
yes,
that's where the metro versus micro starts to factor in too, because just because the metro is, 4 point whatever month it was, or 2.4, that doesn't mean that the micro is.
right,
And where you're selling is the micro, not the metro.
right. But also understand that across the board, this price point number is gonna be indicative to the micro markets themselves, right? So I would argue that the micro markets determine more by price than it is location. Not saying it's not, right? However, going back to kind of what Lynn was saying, you're still got people that are coming in that are still I mean, does anybody have buyers that are still looking and possibly, am I gonna do Somerville? Am I gonna do West Ashley? Like, I mean, they're still bouncing around, maybe not all of them, right? But it's really price point that's gonna determine it.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. The development of Charleston that now skews sometimes a new construction to resale, if you're figuring that out. What that also means is no one says only this part of Charleston will give me what I need. They're now saying, I'm not gonna bite off more than I can chew because real estate's made us all a little nervous in the last few years. So I'm gonna go to the part of town that's more comfortable, but still serves my needs because all the areas now offer everything.
All right,
The most shocking thing about that is the price point that went down, from in the 300 to 650 range, because to me, that's probably, it just seems like that's a majority of where people are, so it's shocking that those price points that they
And-
weren't getting.
and here's why, and this is speculation based on the next few slides. This is sales price to original list price.
Right.
And so what's happening is you've still got sellers that are hungover from watching what happened, right? And so they're coming in and saying, I'm gonna continue to set the floor,
Right.
when really what they may be doing is creating a ceiling. And so that's what seems surprising, because it kind of goes counterintuitive to what Vince just said. It's like your demand is in here, yet what's happening is those are the people who are still thinking, I'm gonna get this.
Yeah, their neighbor down the street 2 years ago sold
Right.
this, so I'm gonna list above that.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Now, here's what's interesting is it doesn't mean, and again, the problem with that discussion is they're like, well, Jay, my neighbor got 450 and you're telling me I should be at 425. I'm losing money. You bought the house. It's long-term, right? You bought the house at 350, right? Like it's still appreciated, right? Okay, so
And in all of these conversations, when we're looking at this, we're just trying to find who has the leverage. Right? If are there more buyers willing to buy than sellers willing to sell? Okay. Or are there more sellers willing to sell than buyers willing to buy? That's going to determine who has the leverage and whether price or terms are going to be what I'm going to play in my negotiating tactics. Where is the leverage in this particular price point, or where is the leverage for this seller or this buyer? So that you can be a fiduciary and get them what they want, but you have to find that arbitrage opportunity. That's why the numbers can be so powerful.
Yep.
Is, oh, look at this.
um,
Make a win.
all right, so let's talk time versus money. The days on market, this is where it gets fun. Where are my fellow nerds? We're nerding up. Here we go. All right, so we've got, it is higher days on market median in 7 out of the 8 price points. No shock, our 250 to 300 didn't take as long to sell.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but it's very interesting to see, and again, this is a perspective thing. Right, 29 days overall, higher by 9 days, that's a 45% drop, or excuse me, gain. So again, it goes back to the perspective. Someone put their house on the market Q4 last year. They're at a cocktail party with their neighbor who put their house on the market Q4 the year before. It's taking almost twice as long, right, for them to sell their house, or 50% more. So yeah, here's what we know. Median price, days on market's going up. Now let's dissect it. Oh, sorry, yes.
Looking at the page numbers, are there purposefully other pages missing in between?
Yes, well, yes.
For several in a row?
Yes, because I added 2 slides on this and it made change the number of the slides.
Okay.
Yeah, your report will be accurate.
No, but my report goes like from page 11 to 13 to 15 to 17. Even if it's page 1 here. Yeah.
Because it's 2 on 1 page.
Oh, it's.
The slides. Thank you. It takes a village. What?
I see.
I took out some vital information that actually made it look terrible. Yeah. No, you're good. All right, so let's break this down a little bit more. This is, so what we've talked about now is list price to sales price and days on market with no really taking into consideration of anything else. Now, when we talk original list price, this takes into consideration any homes that failed. So any canceled or withdrawals, the original list price of the canceled or withdrawn is actually what's factoring here, not with the current listing that was on there. Okay, so it's important to know.
Which happens to be, what was it, 26% of the market?
Yeah. Stop
jumping
ahead.
I'm
Listen,
sorry.
I know we're excited. We gotta
I was,
build up.
yeah. Real,
So the stat for original list price is when they first started to try to sell. So if a house went on the market, was on the market for 90 days and canceled or withdrew and then came back on the market, it's not what they came back on the market for, it's their original list price of when they started. Okay? And again,
Does that factor in a period of time where they were out of the market?
I knew that question was gonna be asked and I don't know the answer to it. I'm willing to imagine that it is within a very short time frame, right? If it expired in 2023 and came back on, 6-12 months later, no, it would not. I'll get the answer to that, but it would be consecutive, yes.
The thing that's so interesting is when you compare like numbers sold by price range, days on market, price reductions. The fact that these, like for instance, between 3 and 3.99, not a lot on the market, so the sales went down. However, the days on market and the price reductions are still higher. So it's such a dichotomy, weird thing that we don't have a lot of that price range, for instance.
Mhm.
But yet they're still dropping the price and staying on the market.
Yep.
So.
that has to do with, there's a mismatch between buyer expectation and seller expectation.
Right.
And it's just more dramatic in that price point because of how impactful some of the economic variables are, like affordability.
Well, I also-
That's how I analyze
A
it.
lot of that price point is new construction, which is really hard to compete against if you're resale.
Yeah.
Another,
Yeah, not gonna find-
to an extent.
Well, but understand, okay, again, zoom back out. This is why it's so important to do the data set of the general market and break it down by price point versus zoom in on the market. Because new construction, where we have a lot, does not have enough of an impact on these stats where you kind of have to take them out too much. Right? Now, again, will that change if you're in a neighborhood who's still got 5 years to build out? Sure. But overall, again, that's why we break them down as much, but over time as much.
And you asked about, what was it?
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, so anything that we came, I'll have to find out if it's withdrawn. Well, it would be with withdrawn or temporary off the market. It would be.
It kind of stops the clock while you're under contract.
But then we start.
But then,
Yeah.
Cumulative keeps
Also
going.
this day,
Yeah,
So did that.
it will be because those are counted in cumulative numbers. Yep.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is really accurate, but I can't help but think there's also a reality to the advisors of the sellers if they are agents who also only knew they got in the market during a certain type of market. And I'm not criticizing or saying that if you're new in the market, that means you aren't a good advisor, but there are people advising them on certain things or being okay with certain things that are also affecting that. Because they also are hungover from the market they
Yeah.
got into.
Oh, 100%.
And you'll see that show
Well,
up.
statistics are important,
Yeah.
I guess, is to say is you have to take these, regardless of how long you've been in the market. And understand you're advising them and make sure it's properly advising.
Yeah.
Well, you'll
100%.
see this whole presentation come down to a couple of simple things. One of them is not necessarily us, but the market is taking over price listings.
Oh, yeah.
A very high
Yeah.
level, like a high percentage
All over the
of
place.
listings taken are, okay, fine, I'll just list the house. 25% above where it should be. And that's impacting sellers in a pretty dramatic way,
Yes.
right? From
It's affecting
holding
the
costs,
market.
and that's, and I believe you're correct in that that does represent the knowledge of the fiduciary, of the agent.
I mean, you can simplify that down into one question. If agents are truly advising the clients properly, why are almost half of the market having to reduce the price?
That's right.
And almost 25% of the market not selling,
Right.
right? It's not, and all of these people are represented.
26%.
That's where your market share is.
Does it happen that you don't get that listing because another agent?
100%.
Overpriced.
No, 100%. Yeah. John?
It might have been asked already, but is new construction in this state, that?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
25.
another 300, 399, is that 2 years ago, a lot of those many of those were in that lower category.
Mhm.
So it feeds into what Vince was saying, the buyer expectation.
Yeah.
New construction, they probably put in maybe a third of the sale. So it's really not representative of all those construction, I think.
Right, it doesn't it has some impact and it's gonna skew these some, but goes back to it also will, this is where you'll have to be really familiar with the micro market.
Right.
Cause if you are going into a market that's 50%, a neighborhood that's 50% sold out, that's gonna have a much bigger effect than one that's not. So,
I would use it in my listing presentation, I would use this particular chart to help set expectations for sellers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, this is a great chart to use and say, hey, I know that maybe your friend or your cousin sold last year, and they sold in 5 days. Let me show you why. Right, and let me show you how they sold in 5 days. What were the economic impact or indicators that showed us why, right? And then this is what we can expect moving forward, but here are the things that I'm going to do because you said that you want to sell quickly and have your net as high as possible. Here are the things that we're going to do together to ensure that we beat this number, but we have to know everything regresses to a mean, so this is a possibility. That standard and expectations conversation in the beginning, from a price standpoint, can happen with this slide.
yep. All right, so let's get into that. So how does that impact when you do have to do a price reduction? So this is pretty interesting here too. So this is the percentages of homes that had to do a price reduction prior to selling. Okay, not just any listing. These are homes that sold. And basically what it's saying is 44.7% had a price reduction before they sold. So 7 out of 8 of the price ranges had to do a price reduction in order to sell. What is that telling you about the price of homes?
Right.
It's false.
Let me re-ask that. What is that telling you about the value of homes?
Hasn't gone up as much as people think it has. Appreciation is
That's right.
3%, not 18.
There's a lack in the market acknowledging the market trend.
I think it tells us absolutely nothing about the value of homes. And this is the point, is we hear all these people had to do price reductions, so that means values are going down. We've already shown that values are not going down. This tells us that our expectations are still going up, right? But the value of the home is not going down. Okay?
That's the comment.
That's the conversation, because by the way, you don't want, this is both telling the seller the reality and the good as well as the bad. Because if they come in and they're thinking, well, it's price reductions, I'm gonna take a hit on my house. No, you're not. You're not. Now, but you can't keep looking to your neighbor that sold Q4 last year. You're not selling them. Right? So again, we've got our old faithful 250 to 299 is the only one where that didn't go up. All right, so again, you promised you're gonna brief through the math. This is important. This is important. So what did it take as far as how much you had to reduce the price in order to get a contract and sell? This is fascinating. So this is saying the median price reduction that you had to have in order to sell. And on average, it's saying if you did a price reduction, on average, it had to be at least 5%. That is a lot. So if you've got a $500,000 house, that's a lot of money that you're having to reduce to get your contract. 10% if you're below 250.
That's very strange.
Yeah. Again, but if you look at that from a perspective, if you're putting a house on the market under 250 in Charleston, you're probably going to think, I'm going to just push the market. I'm going to just raise the price higher. Why not? Right? Yeah. But this to me is
that is location wise.
Yeah.
You've shrunk your demand pool.
Yeah.
The buyer pool is much smaller in that particular price point because of where, from a location standpoint, those particular properties are.
I'd be curious to see how many of those properties were in the next bracket. Too, right? Were they at the 350 mark, or, you know, were they, excuse me, the 300 mark, or 250 and up, and then they dropped to that 250 mark, and that's what got the contract, right? So, all right. Promise you go through it, you breathe through the math. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, because the debate always becomes, I'll still want to test the market and see what happens.
Yeah.
Right? Like, all this made sense, and you're like, Mr. Seller's gonna get it, got it, man, I crushed that presentation. And they're like, that's nice, I'm still listening up here, right? So here's what you have to do is say, what does that impact have? So when you do a price reduction, homes that sold in Q4, this is fascinating, homes that sold in Q4 that did not have to do a price reduction got 100% of list price. Across the board. There's only one price point where they didn't get 100% of list price, or excuse me, 3, where they didn't get 100% of list price. So what that's saying is, when we're talking about pricing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, it's incredibly important to know that if we price correctly, because here's what they say, well, people are going to want to negotiate. Well, what we know is that 44% of the buyers, sorry, 56% of the buyers that closed did not negotiate a penny off the price. Because if you don't do a price point, you're gonna, or a price reduction, you'll get 100% of it if you're priced correctly. Yeah.
For adjusting, like, closing time?
We're gonna talk about concessions. Yeah, this is only price point. The concession one is a good discussion. Concession one's a good discussion. All right, but here's what's interesting. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's, I mean, look how much less that it's costing them if they price too high. Now, the discussion that'll come up is, well, if they price at 120% and they still get, as example, 93% on that, that's not how that works. We've got a stat coming up in a second that will negate that, meaning, well, Tim, I understand that, right? But if I can still get 95% of original list price, or if I know when I get the price right, this is telling me I'll get 100%, that's not how it works. Yes.
Non-math people who need to see things.
Mhm.
Can you do an example over there on the board of this?
Probably not, but I can, well,
Was not prepared for that.
yeah, well, I mean, sure. I mean, let's just take as an example for the 5 to 600. If you priced it incorrectly at 500, and let's say you just did it at 525. Okay, if you had to do a price reduction to 500, what this is telling you is you're actually going to go only get 92% of the 525. Whereas if you just priced it at 500, you would have gotten 500. Okay. And sold it faster.
And that's the key right
That's
there.
the key.
We're- That's right, and we're gonna go into a statistic shortly here that talks about the difference, or the days on market of those that have a price reduction versus those that don't, right? And I mean, it's, right, I think it's 7 days compared to whatever, 70, but what's interesting about that, this is all cost, right? Holding costs, not realizing true appreciation, list price to sales price, the whole 9 yards. So yeah, it's 7% off from the original list price. Yet, how much money in mortgage payments and holding costs do they have because of the additional days on market when I reduce the price? Does that make sense? So we're gonna walk through that. I'm teaching training the presenter next week, and it specifically says, don't do a formula on the board you don't know the outcome to. Let's see how this works out. So let's use that example of 525. What that stat up there is telling us is if we are priced correctly, or excuse me, if we have to do a price reduction, instead of 525, we're gonna get 93.5% of that, which is what? 488,250.
Wow.
Now. Correct.
This is working.
This is working.
Formula's working.
We're doing good, right? So already you know you're getting more, and we haven't even gotten how long it's taking you to do it. Right? However, if you would price at 500 and held, you'd get 100% of 500, which is what? There you go. There you go, right? Which is more or less than 488.
More.
Right. Right. Now, people will say, well, that's fine. When I get to 500 though, then I'll just hold strong at 500 and still get more. We're going to show you in a minute where that doesn't work. And that, but even the list price, correct. Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Because now like buyer psychology comes into play.
Yeah. So here's where this shows up. So this is what we call the negotiation penalty. Because here's what happens when you show them this one. That's fantastic. I'm going to price it 525 so I can negotiate. Here's what happens when you do that. The negotiation penalty basically tells you at this point, if you have to do a price reduction, this is the percentage of sales price to the reduced list price. Right? So in this case, this person says, I want 525. I'm going to give room to negotiate. You know, you're eventually going to have to do a price reduction to 500. Where if you've done this original math, they're going to say, no, actually, I would have gotten more. I'd get 500 if I go. What this is telling you is you now are only getting 98.5% of your reduced price. Which if you had just gone to that price originally, where would you have been percentage? 100%.
So you cost yourself 1.3%, and 1.3% of 500 grand isn't small.
No.
Right? For a consumer.
Difference between those two numbers is 2.4%. 500 to 48.
Wow, interesting.
It's how much?
2.4%.
So you'd win. So you'd technically win on that one then.
Yeah.
You say, Mr. Seller, or you would actually get a little bit more because this difference here. However,
You still lost.
however,
You had your-
your price, your days on market. So this is a great example. Yes, you could possibly do that here. What Brian is saying is had you
You want a price.
read through it, right? What Brian's saying is, okay, it still may be worth it because if I drop to 500 and I'll still get more than this 488, so I'll still get a little bit more and maybe worth the risk. That make sense? Everybody's with me so far on this? Okay, here's what we're not taking into consideration. You've now gone from a median days of market of 4 without a price reduction to 72 with a price reduction. So now you've said, okay, you made a point more, but you also made almost 3 more mortgage payments.
3 more mortgage payments, the quality of life.
Yeah, yes.
What if you have
And
both?
3 or 4 times a week, you've had to clean the house, you've had to get the kids out, right? You've had to throw everything into the dishwasher. Correct, and the value of the home you're buying has gone up.
Had to buy your partner like flowers or.
Right, right,
You're lying in bed every night wondering why it hasn't gone under contract for 72 days.
Yeah.
correct.
And mold is growing underneath.
Start to paddle into some deeper water. Get real specific.
Your father-in-law's fault every single day.
Yeah, exactly, the father-in-law's called.
Divorce attorney.
Okay, I mean, you could, but it's also year over year.
Annuals help balance all that
You
out.
could. You could. I think as far
This
as,
is different.
correct.
We'll see that.
Yeah, and we'll see that as we start doing these regularly. And I think with the information we have now, it's just, I mean, again, the trend is always gonna be the same. Right, so where the specifics may not be, the trend is going to be. Yeah.
It's, I don't know, I'm asking, but how much of a factor, say, would presidential election have had?
Possibly.
The conversation I've had, I don't know what asset you're gonna end up in the president, you know? So immediately you're like, okay, you know, I guess the question is, would that have been a factor, say what it was 4 years ago, or 8 years ago?
Possibly, here's the deal, here's,
Around that, but it's still like, it pops for a second and then it pops right back, and it bounces right back.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, that conversation may come up. Let's fight for what the market's telling us the trends are doing.
Yeah.
Not for what possibly could be, or what the limitations may be, or the exceptions may be, right? Everybody's worried about the exceptions. I think we bring the exceptions into the conversation a lot. There's a fascinating stat that talks about commissions when we were allowed to talk about it, that said that, what was it, 80-something% of the time, the agent brought up commission amount and whether or not it was negotiable. And I'm not saying you don't misunderstand me. Obviously, you tell me it's negotiable. 80+% of the time, it was the agent who brought it up versus just saying, here's what my commission is. I think we tend to do, I'm not picking on you, AJ, I don't think, but be prepared for it to come up. But is that going to come up? And all you can say at that point is like, this is why it's not necessarily a crystal ball, right? It's just a trend of information that we have. and what we've seen. I don't know. That answer your question?
And all of those things like economics, like financial, the whole 9 yards, kind of, there's a lot of variables. Presidential elections, storms, all kinds of stuff. All of those are gonna show up in a short-term way, but most of the time, the market is going to regress toward the trend. Yeah, right. And
This quarter might have been a little bit different, but I think that intuitively we know this is happening.
Right. Well, and that's, the trick is to find out how to say that. Right there. It's like, yes, all these things can be variable, but if we're gonna look in a second too of the trend over since 2018, during which we had an election and we had rate changes and we had all these, and what we know is that it is still like, and this is what was so funny back in October when we were talking about September, October, we were doing the update after Mega King. Everybody was waiting for the two things. What are the rates gonna do and what's gonna happen on November 4th? And all you did was wait to make the same flipping decision you would have made in September.
Yeah.
Nobody went out and said, I mean, a few people went out and said, well, they won, I'm not doing anything anymore. Few exceptions, right? Or, oh, rates did this, I'm not doing anything anymore. It's like, what were you waiting for?
Well, the reason I always feel like the reason the springs of every year are a certain way is because we're reviewing this that was the year prior. And everybody goes into the market January and February, smart, with these stats to then uptick spring. That's why you have multiple years of fourth quarter, because it then shows that no matter what, we're in the end of the fourth quarter. What do we do with that now? I think that these conversations and review of the year affects the spring.
Yeah. 100%. 100% on that.
Stats.
Yeah. I still think, I mean, every time I look out and look, this one is just baffling to me. I mean, I know we've been talking about it. It's like, this is the thing that I think you'll find, and that's why it's so important in your consultation. What's most important to you? They're gonna say, as sellers, they're gonna say, what are the top 3 things they want?
Money.
Most amount of money, least amount of time, and least amount of hassle. And oftentimes we always think in that order, when quite frankly, for a lot of people, it's the other order.
Right.
Least amount of hassle, least amount of time, and yes, I want the price. This right here, I mean, this is crazy. The median is 11 times, 2.5 months longer to sell. This is crazy to me. That's a lot in carrying costs, and it's a lot on the emotional well-being of it. It's just like,
And think about you as the agent. Is,
oh yeah.
I mean, if you're doing your job well, you're following up with those people consistently. How many phone calls is that?
What'd you say?
for 78 days.
For 70 days.
For 70 days.
For 70
Well,
days.
listen, for some of you, it's not a big deal because some of you don't talk to yourself. Going in here, got a handful of emails in my inbox to say differently, right? But no, I mean, but it's right. It's like, but, and here's the deal. This sets you up for the seller that does want to make all the decisions, despite what you said, to simply report back and say, look, here's the good
Here's how
news.
it's showing up, right?
The market is trending exactly like we thought it was going to.
You're in the 30 days.
Yeah. And as much as I didn't want to celebrate an anniversary with you, congratulations.
Hey, it's me again.
Okay? Yeah. Definitely start with I told you. They lay it out. They lay it out.
Who gets blamed?
Oh, 100%.
Right, so by having this conversation ahead of time, we can together lock arms and come up with, based on data and based on what is most important to you, what we can expect into the future potentially. Now, okay, 78 days, here's how much that's gonna cost you.
Yeah.
And if we price here, this is what we could get. Here's how much we have to appreciate in costs though, over a 78 day period. Is that more important to you and playing this risk? Right? Are you okay with it? Or if we sell it in 4 days or whatever the day, right? 7. This is how much it's going to cost you. That means convenience is probably more important to you. But now we can have a true conversation about their wants and needs.
Yeah.
So that we're not looking like the scapegoat here.
Yep.
Right? Because standards and expectations to this entire thing are very, very important, more today than they were 3 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and again, when you set it, you can come back and have that discussion. And when they come back and say, well, gosh, it's taking a lot longer, instead of being an emotional reaction, you go back to your needs analysis and say, Jan, let's talk about that. Because your goals here may have changed. And when we first talked, your number one goal was price. And in order to get that price, that's why we went here. If it's time, then we need to have a discussion. And that segues in it versus just be like, oh, it's just calling again.
Well, and that's the most probably likely conversation when you are at that 78 day point.
Oh, 100%.
Like, cause it did start out as price.
Yeah.
Well, now it's a time
Yeah.
factor.
And prepare yourself.
Right.
Prepare yourself for the person like, I don't care how long it takes, I just want the most amount. They are lying,
Yeah, you do.
right?
You
They.
could also, instead of using the word price, use the word cost.
Correct. There you go.
Well, and also, you mentioned, having this conversation and preparing your seller. Also, get the listing first, then have this conversation.
Yeah.
Cause sometimes that's what will be the difference between you getting a listing or not,
Right.
because they don't understand what some of this actually looks like.
Yeah.
I would use this up front and the front. like,
Yeah.
and-
So here's, yeah, so here's the, all right, let's go back in. There's two schools of thought on this, and I appreciate both. And I don't think you have to worry about making that decision if you have enough leads. Oh, see what I did there? Lead generation, man, that one, some of you are so pissed right now. Right? But think about it, right? Think about it. You come in and you say, "Hey, look, here are my standards. My standards are, we're gonna follow these guidelines. And this is what I want to take in my business. If we're worried about that, it's likely, and this is a broad brush statement. I'm not picking on Jay. Like, this is a broad brush statement. It's like, it's likely like you just want that one. Guys, I'm telling you, going back to everything that y'all shared and the great things that happened in 2024, none of y'all shared, man, I priced that home perfectly. You all shared what the emotional well-being was, the balance of life, the things that you have. These guys on the left-hand side are not that. We're gonna come back to that, yes.
And to add to that, because when I started looking at these, I started thinking, okay, now my commission is negative, because if I think about my costs per hour, and if I'm spending 108 days talking to you versus 7, then that's how I process it in my mindset. It's not a commission, it's a commission. If it took me 108 days to get there, at some point I'm negative because I spent 108 times 100 hours.
And it allows you to have the conversation up front to say, okay, Shakima, here's what we'll do. We'll go with your price. And I promise you, my commitment is we're going to do everything we can to market the product just as if you had gone with mine. What I want you to understand though, is my goal is for it to still be in 4 days. Yet the market's telling us it's possibly closer to 72. So when it gets in that number, if you get frustrated, just tell me, because we know at that point, it's simply the market. It's not your home. It's not me. It's what the market had told us. And as long as you're okay with us having that discussion, great, let's do it. Now be careful, because if it's, yeah, no problem. And then we know how that goes. Yeah.
I had a great idea to use this. When I go into a listing presentation, I normally bring estimated nets at different price levels. Very well, if you price it here, you net here, you price it here, net here. Well, if the house is vacant or is an investment property or whatever, maybe include the cost of additional months of
Great.
carrying
100%.
cost in that net sheet at the different price levels. Say, well, you price it here, it might take 72 days to sell, and you might have to pay 3 extra payments. That's a cost. So it sort of hits them as, hey, I'm gonna net less.
Yeah, I love that. What we're gonna do is, as part of the wrap up, is we're gonna get back in our groups and we are gonna say strategically, what are some ways we can use this? And those are the ideas that I want to come from that.
And what Alan just said is spot on, in my opinion. You've just also positioned yourself as prepared and knowledgeable and looking at every variable. Hey, I know that we're just looking at price here, but let me bring this into the equation. There's something else that's going to decrease or impact, let's use your net, your overall net, and that's how long we stay in this house that we have to sell, right? So there's a lot of conversations here that position you to be the expert, which automatically draws that seller closer to you.
And not just the expert, but really thinking like their best interest.
Yes, right. And
As a
that's
fiduciary.
correct. And that's why it's important to know the goals, because when you know what the goals are, then you can go specific, because some of them may not care about the time, right? And you can just specifically say, well, because your goals are this is how that shows up.
And to Shakima's point, we can position ourselves as efficient investments of real estate.
Right.
We do better, you do better.
Right. There you go. Love that.
Well, it goes back to the graph where you could, like, the bottom line is back to what everyone's just saying is you get to say to your seller, there are 2 sellers right now. Which path do you want to choose? Because I'll do the same thing for both. Which one do you want to be? And then, on one road, you have 3 months of carrying on. The one, and that may not be a lot for you, Mr. Seller. So then the other one isn't as dire. But if you give them that and let them pick the path, then you also can tell them what they can expect during the path.
Yep.
Because you've already told them the path they've chosen, it has these number of phone calls with, we're still 70 days away from that contract.
Yep. Which again, fantastic segue into the next slide, Ricky.
You also have to tell them if they're interviewing other agents maybe tell them what they want to hear. It's like, okay, yeah. I'll list your house at 525, but we think that it's at 500. But then you're like, all right, if I tell you to list your house at 490, so we can be on the market for 4 to 7 days, and your agent lists at 525 and they win the deal, once you get to 490, fire them and call me, and I would have wasted the 72 days.
Yeah.
Of your time.
Yeah, and it brings up a good point, is you have that discussion, again, you as the professional get to make the decision. Right, so in that situation, Ricky can say, I'm not willing to do that price, and when you get to that price, call me. I caution you on that one, because at that point, they're in a good relationship.
I like
They're in a
prefacing
relationship.
it with, hey, a lot
Or-
of agents are gonna
Hold that
come.
thought really quickly, or you take it and you said, here's what I'm doing, because you know that you've explained it enough, but it gives you the leverage to do both.
Say, hey, a lot of agents are gonna come in here and try to buy your listing.
Mhm.
This is what it looks like. Or are they bringing you this data?
Yeah.
Make sure that they're gonna come in and try to buy this listing. It's a tactic that a lot of agents do.
Mhm.
Just knowing that they're gonna try to work you down.
Yep.
While you've got it listed, here's what the data is telling us. Make sure that they are bringing the data and let me know if
Yeah.
I'm missing something.
I like it.
Cause I don't wanna waste your time or mine.
Correct, Brian.
So I think importantly, to have a conversation with sellers, we have to look at seasonality of the market,
Mhm.
the overall trend in the market, and we have to look at the current comp environment.
Correct.
So we're talking to these sellers and we're giving them these options, these paths. They also need to understand that nothing's stopping another seller tomorrow, a week from now.
Yeah.
From choosing option A and pricing it at what it's worth, which then become a column.
Yeah.
We have to make sure buyers-
100%, 100%, and that's why this summary page, so this is the real story, right? And this is where you get to the page, it's like you've got two ways you could go. Right, because what we know is in the quarter, 3,000 closings happened, they averaged the 97.5%, they took 30 days to sell, 29 days to sell. Right? You can go one of two ways at this point, you can go price a little high, and then when you have to do a price reduction, you're gonna then lower the list price to sales price, and it's gonna take 2.5 times as long. The risk that you have when that happens. This is fascinating, by the way. This is super important. If you do this, you then have a 50% chance of not selling.
You price the right.
If you price too high and then you had to do a price reduction.
Where does that number come in?
22, so if as it moves down, 50% of the homes that had to do a price reduction then did not sell.
Because their buyers bought on the other path.
They went and bought something else. Now, they did have to come back on the market with another agent.
I don't see that number.
You're adding them together.
No, we're not. So roughly 44.7% of the homes had to do a price reduction. Out of that 44.7%, divide those two into 22. Again, these are all percentages of the top number.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so 22% of the homes that eventually sold, which is roughly a quarter of them, from original list price, actually failed and had to come back on the market with another agent.
Got it.
Okay, the other 22%, which is, again, these are 50% subset of the price reduced ones, right? The other 22% that were not previously listed, right, so they didn't fail, however, they still took a lot longer and got a lower list price to sales price. Whereas if you had gone the no price reduction route, we still know you can get 100% and get a contract in 7 days.
But what you're doing is this is overpriced homes, priced right. now.
Correct.
Okay.
Option A for pricing, option B for pricing. And then when you do that, you get, yeah, correct, you get to choose. And then when that happens, by the way, this is a fascinating one. 6% of the homes that sold in that quarter actually failed to sell the first time and relisted with someone else. Here's what's fascinating. They still got 100% of their original list price. So you think about it. They originally listed with Ben. Ben did a terrible job, right? So it expired. Yeah, it tracks. So it expired, right? And they put it back on the market And when it came back on the market at the same price, think about that mentality of a seller just for a second. They still got 100% of the list price, so they won, and it took them 5.5 months to sell. That's a fascinating one. By the way, if you prospect expireds and you go get this guy, buckle up. Buckle up. Because, and again, they're fun, right? They're fun because they're set on there. Or you go all the way to the right-hand side, not previously listed, no price reductions, 100% of the sales price to list price. Yes.
Can we have a conversation about, you're talking about this at 100%. Well, what am I leaving on the table by pricing it there?
What do you mean?
Like, well, cause I could go higher.
Right. Well, that's what we talked about before, the negotiation factor, right? And that goes back to where we had it at 525. Right? What are you leaving on the table? That's why you need to kind of know the numbers and then go to what Brian said. We know that if you have to do a price reduction and you get to the right price now, which everyone thinks, oh, it's finally my original list price, you're not going to get 100% of that anymore. The market, because what's happened is, I think you said this, what happened, you basically become stale bread in the pantry, right? Because they've been sitting there and whatever, it brings it down. Now, it may not bring it down, like Brian said, all the way, but you've also paid another 2.5 months worth of carrying costs. Yeah. Yes.
Like argue to an extent that like you can't make money on the because everybody knows a good deal when you get it. So if you're priced competitively, you're gonna again enter the possibility of offers.
Yeah.
Just like we've experienced before, we know that. So and I think it's agents who say these things like this is way below and get way above. So when you think of that example to your clients, like you did not have a situation of multiple offers when the demand was high. Yes. So when you price to a point where the demand will be high for your property, the same thing is it. So you're not gonna leave them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that goes back to this slide. It's what we know is that in 6 out of the 8 categories, 5 out of the 8 categories of price points, they got 100%. Right? I mean, so that goes to what Tyler was saying. All right. Let's go back to now. All right, total failed listings. This is kind of interesting too. Failed listings. So these would be expired or withdrawn. So same thing. What's interesting on this one is it actually kind of it's gone. Put in how many of them? Increase in 5 out of 8 price ranges. We've seen an increase of the number of homes that did not sell the first round. They still sold, right? But they had to relist at some point in time. What does this tell you? Same story, right? I mean, there's 20, again, if you're gonna overprice your home, you got a pretty good chance that it could fail. And then you're having to go through and list with someone else. All right, quick summary on these, putting all this together. So basically at the end of the day, here's what it looks like. For every 100 listings that sold, or every 100 listings that came on the market, 74 of them sold. Which means 26 failed, likely due to overpricing. Again, this is coming in for landing with the client. So 100 came on the market, 26 of them did not sell, which was likely because of pricing. Out of the 74 that sold, 33 of them had to have a price reduction before they sold. And then what happened to them is that means 59 out of every 100 listings were overpriced. This goes back to what we were saying earlier is we've got to talk above the chatter. Because this is what they're seeing out there is they're not seeing the fact that they're overpriced homes. They're trying to blame everything else. The market's doing this, they're doing that. Here's what we know. It's a healthy number of days on the market, median price is going up. You can't really ask for much more than that on a stable real estate market.
This is why you hear people say skill-based versus speed-based.
Right.
This slide right here, right? This is that we've moved to a skill-based market as compared to what we were in a speed-based market.
Yeah.
59% of listings are overpriced. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a challenge.
Yeah. Median price has gone up consistently and average days on the market has gone up negligibly. or just do months of inventory, right? I mean, we've got a healthy time frame for the market. If we get our head out of 2020 to 2022, right? It's a healthy time on the market. Time and value are the two things that really drive it. So it's still a healthy market. All the negative that you're hearing is because almost 60% of the homes coming on the market are overpriced. And it's causing us all to be crazy.
I have a question for you about this chart and the data. It says that if you want to reproduce it, you have to ask for the permission to Jeremy Bragg.
You've got permission. Yeah, that's like, we've got exclusive with them here locally. So yeah, you guys can use that on there. So,
Are you local ones?
yes, yeah. You'll get a PDF and a PowerPoint that's editable.
And you're gonna do this once a quarter?
Yes. Yeah. We'll look, depending on how, right now, it's gonna be quarterly. If we think we need it more than that, I don't think you're gonna see a month over month trend difference in this stuff. Would y'all agree? Okay, good. Because if you said no monthly, I would have been over promising at that point. So thank you for playing along on that. All right, and then 41%, no price reduction, priced correctly. All right.
Real quick back to that slide.
Yeah.
When I say skill-based, I just want to clarify this. When I say skill-based, it has to do with the agent's ability to set standards and expectations. Right? It's harder today than it was 2 years, which is fascinating. And we don't want to lose sight of the carrying costs. That's where this is, that's the biggest impact is the carrying cost, 78 days versus 7. That's a huge difference in everything from like money to time to convenience to your reputation as an agent. All of those things are going to be impacted when we overprice a home. I think that's what's really interesting.
And you need to say, can't forget this, because anyone who has buyers knows they're hearing it. You have to tell the people who are saying, well, I'll just go and see what I can get. When you do finally go under contract, the seller could potentially be not taking advantage of, but you're so happy to have a contract, that buyers will blow you up in the repair period. They're then gonna say, you haven't sold, you're desperate for me to go to closing, now I'm gonna hit you harder.
The stale bread.
And I hear that from my buyers, that I feel bad for sellers, but I'm like, oh, I get it, but my point is talk to the sellers about, it's not just a contract, it's who is going to, you have multiple offers, if you price it right, the buyer knows I can't mess around because someone else is gonna take this, so it's not just the contract, it's when they get you under it and then they beat you down harder.
Okay, and what you have to understand too, it's such a good point in the negotiations, because as a listing agent, if that happens, when it comes in, unfortunately, you're in an awkward position where you have to be real with them to say, listen, I understand where you don't accept and you're frustrated. My concern is, as we go back down this path,
70 more days.
here's what's happening. As a buyer's agent, you need to use this information and be like, look, I can tell you what the stats are. These people don't want to go back in the market because of X, Y, or Z. Or these people don't care about going back in the market because they're priced correctly. Right? If you put an offer in within 7 days, that means you were interested enough in the house, as was someone else. So be careful what you ask for on this. They don't need it. They don't need to beg you to buy the house. So it allows you from a buyer's agent standpoint to have that discussion. Yeah. Which is exactly why they get 2% less when they finally get to their list price, because they're being advised by a buyer's agent to know what to do. Again, same thing applies though, right? As a buyer's agent, you're just educating them and say, this is what the trend is telling us. They still could be stubborn.
So back to that path of like, what are your options? Then you have to say not just carrying costs. How vulnerable are you in the repair and the inspection period? How vulnerable are you then at 50 to 60 days waiting for that one buyer?
Yeah. All right. Couple more things. So number of sales that did not have to do a price reduction, or I should say they got 100% of list price. This is still an opportunity. Like people are thinking there's all these price reductions. You're still having 33 overall, 33.8% are getting 100% of list price to sale price.
It's a pretty dramatic shift from last year.
Yeah.
41% to 33%. That's relatively impactful.
Yeah.
Right. And so that does speak to this normalization of supply and demand of that relationship.
Yeah. All right, days on market. for sales price to list price. Again, same thing applies. Those that got 100% of sales price to list price aren't selling in 4 days. Now, this is a little bit different. Before we saw the one that said no price reduction, right? No price reduction, they got actually 7 days. But those that got 100% of list price, they're selling quickly. Yes. Like the percentage difference between 29 and 4 per se, is that what you mean? Yeah. In most of them in the top right, it will give that summary, but it doesn't do it for each one. So we can see if we can work on that. Yeah.
1 million, 2 million is a huge bracket. We break that to like 1 to 1.5 and then 1.5 to 2.
We can. The reason that we do it in each one is based on the amount of data subset that's in there. Right. But so we can look at that and we can look at what it would look like because because of where you're normally working too. That is a big bracket in there. So yes, we'll look and see what we can do with that for sure. Yeah. All right. Seller paid closing costs. This one's pretty interesting. How's everybody doing? Doing good? Doing good, everybody? Everybody still awake? You still with me? Good. We got lunch here in a second. Everybody's good. We're good. You survived a lot of the math, right? This one's a little bit easier because it gets back to closer to commission discussions and everybody knows the math on that, right? So we're gonna do that. All right. So this one's interesting. Setting expectations. There are still sellers. We've got a seller issue on my desk right now where the seller didn't know they had to pay closing costs or didn't know they agreed to a certain amount of closing costs. That happens, right? Now, because a lot of people just conceptually don't get it. What this is telling you is that 51% of closings, there was some sort of contribution from the seller. And you just need to set that expectation for them when they're setting their price and what to expect when they get to offers. A lot of people, I still have sellers who I'm not going to pay any closing. Everybody had that recently? I just don't want to pay closing costs. Where I appreciate that, I would be remiss not to share with you that in your price point, look at this, 61% of the closings paid some sort of seller concession. Right? Important to know, yeah.
Does this also include commission as a closing cost?
No,
or is that
there's
separate?
no way for us to determine that.
Okay.
There's no way for us to determine that. However, this next,
yeah.
in a minute, we'll talk about that. So this is on average how much this is the one. On average, this is how much they paid in closing costs. Okay, now this one is total speculation because there's no way to pull the data, but you'll see a pretty large increase year over year in the quarter, especially in these three price points, right? You went from 5,000 as an average to 8,000. I'm willing to bet that a lot of that was driven from the change in the commissions. Because if you look at price points, who are your sellers that were saying, no, I don't want to pay as much commission, let them negotiate it? We're more in these price points. So I think that's where it's showing up. Yes.
Yeah. That may be part of it. And then two, I would speculate too, people are asking for, I'm seeing people ask for more, especially the final rate.
Correct. Could be that as well.
Last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything could do it. Again, it's more about what's the expectation that they have. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of these grew because of the commission. You're right, though. That's going to be a couple different factors. New construction, rate buy down, et cetera.
But I can use this also when I'm talking to when I'm having a conversation with my seller. I can have this conversation and say, this is what we can expect from a negotiating standpoint of what the buyer is going to ask for in closing costs. On average, at our price point, they're going to ask for somewhere around $8,000. Right? And you can factor that into your net, and that's going to impact maybe your price on the front end, things of that nature.
This is a tool.
It's super important to use the verbiage that you factored into your net.
Right.
Buyers don't care how that impacts value. Right? That's I know it's splitting hairs, but it's like, this is a factor into your net, but still understand it's not going to change what the value is going to be.
Do we have a breakdown of whether or not sellers are paying more or less if they like a price reduction?
And concessions? I don't think we do. That's a good question. No, we don't. No.
Is that something that could be analyzed?
Yeah, I can ask. We'll make a note of that.
But even if it's the same.
Yeah.
If their bottom line is.
Correct.
Right, but that was
But
good
that does
to explain to ourselves,
Yes.
like you may get 100%, but you still want to expect.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be an interesting one to see if it goes up. I would imagine that it probably would. Real quick side note, commissions, we didn't really look into this until recently. How do you think commissions trended overall as a percentage in the second half of last year? Commissions received total.
They went up.
They went up.
I think.
I got up, I got stable,
They went up.
got flat, went up by almost 17%. Went up by almost 17%. Our average commission, this again, we can only tell Kennedy Charleston numbers because we can't look commission up. But our numbers went up 17% on the average amount of commission percentage that was taken per transaction from July to December.
Because what I'm seeing happening is those days on market go up, you're getting more demand for a higher commission and so.
Yeah. Well, I think what happened was something that a lot of us, I won't say you, a lot of us, mostly y'all. But everyone was so worried about having to talk about commissions and what's gonna happen. And what it caused you to do was go listen to Winnie talk about value squared, be better at creating your value, telling your story of value, and asking for more money.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happened. Right?
And also, I can tell you, I presented just earlier this month at a insurance brokers association. There were 65 people in the room, like a third of them bought or sold real estate last year. Not a single person in the room knew anything about the lawsuit, not a single person.
Yeah. Shocking.
So when you're talking about the commissions that went up, and I think you said they went up 18%, 17%, and you're saying that's just really the Keller Williams.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. So, and again, all that.
Attracting talent tool.
Yeah, I mean, all that means is you knew how to express your value because you had to, right? All right, financing methods, we'll go through some of these. Majority of them were conventional. You did have a small increase in cash, but really kind of flatlined, really kind of across the board. It's all pretty flat of what happened with the different types of financing. All right. Say that again, by price range? That's a good, yeah, that'd be a good one. All right, so here's what we covered.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what we covered. Year to date, we were down 0.5% in the number of homes sold. Again, these are single family detached. I'm not gonna go back through and go through condo and townhome. There's a little bit of difference in the numbers, but the slides look exactly the same. So I've spent most of your time learning how to talk about this on this one, right? And then when you bring the single family detached, 2.4 months of supply, so it's gone up. Median sales price was up by 5%. Okay, good news. Yes.
You mentioned the single family detached part and how they're basically the same with condos and stuff. Isn't it true that the majority of the market is single family detached?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still I think one of the mindset behind separating them is so because you do have a different discussion when you sit down, and it is worth separating them some. What's really interesting is market share for for townhomes and condos. And I asked the question, I don't know what it is. I feel like there must be, maybe because it's new construction. Maybe that's what it was. But the market, there's not, out of the top 10 companies, no company gained market share in townhome or condos. It wasn't like a drastic drop, but it was a small trend downwards of the top companies and how many of them sold condos or townhomes. And I'm willing to bet the main reason of that is because a lot of it is new construction maybe, but I'm waiting to hear back on what that means, so. Yeah.
Well, and there just aren't as many.
Well, but the thing is the number of them that actually sold has flatlined or gone up a little, so it's not like they went away.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I mean, I think more people are going to the detached side for sure, but there still were sales there. It's just kind of a fascinating thing. All right. Percentage of sales price to original list price. We definitely covered that one. Days on market. Got comfortable with that one. Price reductions, 44.7% higher price reductions that we had to do. Failed listings, 25.7%. Overpriced, almost 60% of the listings that came on the market and sold were overpriced. That's a stat that I possibly would start with or put early on in the conversation. Say the reason the market seems so crazy is because 70% of the market, or excuse me, 60% of the market was overpriced, and here's how we know that. Sales price, original list price, 100%. 33.8% of the homes sold at 100%, which is down a little bit from last year, but again, it still tells you if priced correctly, you're going to get what you asked for. Yes.
So I see that 60% are overpriced.
Yes.
I'm representing buyers.
Okay.
So obviously I don't want to tell my buyers, et cetera, how they're looking at it overpriced.
Correct. This is where your emotional intelligence absolutely has to come in. Let's keep having this discussion. Go. Yeah. Right.
So it's like, okay, but I do both.
Right.
So I've got a buyer, obviously I
Then you
can
switch the
bring
con-
that out.
Yeah.
In my head, as we're looking at it, I think this is probably one of those 7 that are overpriced.
Correct.
Is there a chart or data that I miss it that said how much it was priced?
No.
Percentage comps.
You can run comps on them at that point, but there's not one that says how much. That's a difficult one to do. What you can do is how much.
What percentage of, in this price range are overpriced?
Well, you can do, and what you can do on that one. So 2 things to keep in mind on that. Number 1 is if they're on the market for a week, right? Your days on market's going to be your first indicator of whether or not you can say they're overpriced or not. Right? So if you're going in and you're this interested right now, we can't, I mean, only thing that's going to tell us if we're overpriced are what the comps are, which again, back to Brian's point is like, we absolutely have to be looking more so at actives now than anything else.
Yep.
Right? That's on there. Because what happens is, especially from a seller standpoint, is who else is having this time? This is a good conversation to have is Lane, who else is having the same conversation at their dining room table down the road that's going to come on the market at the same time and priced correctly? Because they just got first in line over you, right? So then when you go to that, you can say this number right here, price reduction as a percentage of original list price is if we feel that this needs to go down, Mr. Buyer, and this home's been on the market for 74 or 60 days or however many days out of it, we could possibly spend some negotiation saying we should be at this percentage point of that original list price. So this would actually tell you that number.
Well, couldn't it be slide before that one? How you look at better on a buyer perspective?
This one?
Yeah. If it's
Yeah, there's a
overpriced.
percentage.
Yeah, there's a percent. Yeah, both of them have the percentage that are in there, but yeah. Yeah, this one would be an easier one to explain.
I guess looking at both sides of it, basically. As the buyer agent, I get that, then we're trying not to say we're not in the 2022 range or 20 range where pricing was crazy.
Mhm.
Because that's where the buyer, a lot of my buyers are like, okay, those were crazy prices, that's why I didn't buy then,
Right.
and now they're, yeah, so I guess it's fair.
Well, and it goes back to like, so the risk in that one is they don't act too fast because they don't want to pay a crazy price. So maybe they'll come down. And that's when you have to kind of take the overall information and say, okay, well, they've only been on the market for 7 days. So you may be right, but you may not be. And so at this point, yeah, and it's like at this point, what I know based on the comps that we're seeing, this is priced at, if you're interested, you act now, know that you're probably going to have to pay close to list price. What is your long-term goal though? Is there a possibility you buy this house, you close at 500 and the next one down the street closes at 475? Maybe, right? But that's only probably going to happen in the next 90 to 180 days. I don't see that happening based on long-term, which was on there.
Well, you also need to get comfortable advising your buyer not to buy the house. I mean, it just needs to be said. I just went through that. My buyer was gonna pay $930 and I said, I don't think it needs to be based on what I'm seeing. I'm uncomfortable with that for you. Let's go in at 880 or 890. And I felt a little bad because I knew that someone else might pay that. Well, that seller reached out to us 2 months later to see if we'd buy it at 880. So if anything, it confirmed, and I was a little uncomfortable with it because I kept him from buying the house. But I did I thought, well, I've never gotten that so right. I guess I know something, you know, but my point is I felt bad for the seller because then the buyer was like, I'm not really interested anymore. And I may get it lower more days now, right? So I think back to the buyer conversation, if you know this information and you're doing the comps, don't get excited. They want to write an offer. Make sure you're looking at what the trend is of what's going on in that neighborhood and then say, let's write an offer for a lower amount that we feel is fair. And if they take it or don't take it, you'll always be known as the one who sent the offer when they are hurting and want to go back to that person who called it right from the beginning. So you have to be real sharp with your buyers and don't let them overpay just because they've been on the market 7 days.
Correct. And I think the 2 big points to take from that was number 1 was the information that you presented him. So it's like, this isn't just me and my random opinion. Like here's what happens. The other point to make on that is it wasn't even 2 months. It was a month later, the seller came back and was willing to go to the price they originally offered, and the buyer moved on and still hasn't purchased. But that gave them time to think, well, you're gonna go back to the stale bread in the pantry? That's a buyer that was willing to buy the house a month and a half ago.
That seller would be closed if they had, and I gave them why I thought, I wasn't trying to be a jerk. Said, this is what this neighborhood's presenting, and there's another house on the market for 100,000 less. When that goes under contract, it's gonna affect the whole market value. We can't ignore that.
Which is what Brian said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. so yes,
Just, you said in one of the classes that we took, and I really thought it was interesting, and I think it was you that said something about when your sellers are pricing their home, also, you don't want to be the house that drives everyone to buy the other.
right.
Right.
Yeah, I think if I did say that, yay me, but I definitely got it from someone else, but it's like, do you want to be the home that sold, or do you want to be the home that sells the other one? Right, because that's what's gonna happen right now. You come on the market, you're either gonna be the home that they choose, or you're gonna be the one that makes them choose the other one. Which comes from two things, pricing condition, which is exactly, by the way, what the seller and Lynn situation. Right? Yeah, okay. Cumulative monthly sales, again, this is kind of just talking about what it's looked like month over month. We're still seeing the trend upwards. Say that again?
I like this slide because it also shows year-to-date 2024 sales down 15.7% year-to-date 2022. And we asked that, but we talk to agents all day, and it's constantly, well, it's harder, it's challenging, right? Well, because there's 15% less homes than 2 years ago. That's why there's less transactions. Why does that happen? Well, in a shifting market, when money is changing hands in different spaces, right? What's the shift book say about the buyer motivation, right? Personal reasons and positive market expectations. Well, when you have one of those reasons that people transact in real estate removed, what happens to the population of buyers and sellers? It shrinks, which would then probably lead us to have a number where 15.7% of them, right? And it feels harder because there are less people that want to transact, because one of the reasons that people transact is for the, right? So the simplicity of that is important.
Yeah.
Which then tells you that your activities are probably, I'm gonna have to talk to more people to sell more house.
All right, so monthly sales, again, this is just kind of shows you why it seems so crazy when we only look at the months. I mean, this is what tends to happen is we just look at what the months are doing. That's why it's important to look at a larger subset. This one isn't really as telling, in my opinion, as this, these next two are. The monthly sales history, right? Again, you're seeing it go up and down drastically, right? Which is kind of what freaks us out a little bit, but the trend line is just showing a slow trend downwards. Right? This is not something that we need to be freaking out about. It's just what's happening with the market.
That's right.
Yeah. And then this is the one that's getting us. This is the one that's getting us. And this is why when you look at certain neighborhoods, so these are basically the monthly median sales price over the last in 2018. And what's happening is the number in 2020 is still flipping people out. Right? They're just like, oh, well, if I had sold back then, well, you didn't. Right? However, this is what the trend is doing. And by the way, it also goes into like Heidi's point of why it's important to do these quarterly, because what's that going to say in December? I mean, you look at the trend in December, November, December over the last few years, it does go down as far as median sales price. That does not mean the overall trend of value is going down. It just happens to, and there's a lot of things that can drive median price. It's not value though. It's who's buying and who's selling at that time.
Yes, seasonality.
The graph Dr. Holmes produces, but he puts the trend line vis-a-vis the annual median price. So in the last 4 years, the line was above the expectation.
Yeah.
And now it's coming back to meet the expectation, the expected price.
Right.
Long term. And so, I mean, a reduction, I mean, a little lower, it's warranted because historically we're above what we should have been.
Correct. And again, this is what goes back to my point earlier is like, as a real estate, as an investor and a homeowner, at the end of the day, we don't operate in 90-day intervals. Yet we make decisions based on 90-day intervals. And it's like, that's not how this works. right? I mean, it's just, it's over time. And if we were to do the cumulative versus the monthly on this one, it would show the same thing, right? It's not that drastic. We're just showing what it looks like monthly and why it hurts a little.
And most of the time, the Q3 or really Q4 is when median sales price decreases.
Yeah.
Almost every time, except for 2023. If you look at 2023, and I don't know the answer to this, progresses back toward the mean that actually increased. And that's different than every other year. So I don't remember what happened at the end of 2023 that could potentially impact that. But my point is that we can expect most likely January, February, March, moving into April, that median sales price will increase. So this is actually a great time for buyers to buy immediately.
Yep.
This is closed, right? So, okay.
Yep. All right. Here's what we're gonna do. When you get back in your groups, roughly the same group, 3 to 5 people, we're gonna take about 10 minutes, maybe more, depending on how the discussion goes. I want you to determine 3 things. Here's what I want you to determine: 2 ahas and 1 action that you're gonna take. What are 2 ahas that you got from today, and what's the 1 action you're gonna take with this information? Okay, don't leave. If you gotta rush your mind, understand that, right? But 2 ahas, 1 action you're gonna take. Then we're gonna come back from that. We're gonna share those. We've got lunch, and then we're gonna wrap up with a couple things. Does that sound good? All right, get your groups and go.
Yes. Okay. That's what I just noted. What happened at the end of 2023? Excuse me.
I
thought it was.
feel like Brian would know. Why did it jump up at the end of 2023?
That's only over the last 5 years. It happened here in 18. Happened a little bit here. Right? No. I wonder what that is.
23?
And what's interesting about it to me is that you call it rates, because that was that year that rates started to come down, and it happened right here, correct?
Right.
So it knocked price down and demand down pretty dramatically. Remember that?
Yes, that's what it was.
Well, I don't know.
All right, here we go.
I see done the paper.
All right. What'd you learn? More price reduction, right? All right, here we go. So, what are some ahas? What did you learn this morning?
Percentage of overpriced homes.
Yeah, it is big.
I mean, I think everyone probably realized that or had that, but that actual percentage is eye-opening.
Yeah.
Like Ernest was saying, like to have that in the back of your mind and be able to have those pointed discussions, whether it's buyers or sellers,
Right.
to really get to the point.
Yeah.
When you're showing up with comps and different seller net sheets and those things, saying, look, the numbers are.
Yeah.
Are, they don't lie. It is weird.
Here's where it is. You get to make a
Here,
decision.
These are the consequences, you go here, these are the consequences, no results.
Yep.
So.
100%. Alan.
For me, it's the ability to say, this is not what I think. This is what's likely shown because of these numbers.
Yeah.
Not me thinking about this, is, you know, relying on these numbers to tell me the likelihood, the probability of this happening.
Yep. Yep. Yes.
To make a difference, you have to have like a 5% price drop.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, on average, in order to get the final price, it had to come down at least 5% from that. Yep, absolutely.
Because I'm sitting here kind of in, aha euphoria.
Okay.
Because of this area that I'm actively engaged in, I'm telling my group. We have, it could be a buyer for us, but we have a seller that's on the other side of the country, that's trying to sell his house for, it's the most that he can possibly sell it for. He's getting zero activity. He's coming to us with a buyer, he's gonna try to buy a house. And who, nobody's had this scenario, right? He's trying to buy a house for the least that he's possibly pay. These slides, this information, it's like you're setting up.
Yeah.
All of my talking points.
Well, that's the purpose.
And to your point, it's like, it's not me, this is
100%.
you. 100%. It's just amazing how this
Yeah.
is speaking.
Well, and here's what's important about that too. What this allows you to do is also kind of have some grace for the sellers who you feel are being stupid right now. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. Like, come on, man. But it's like, they're not alone.
Yeah.
Right? They're not alone.
They're being stupid, it's just that they're trying to hold on to something, you know, that was and isn't.
Yeah, and those are fun ones too, because you want to be like, so let me get this straight. You want to offer this on that listing because of what you're seeing in the market, but you want to stand firm here as a seller. Right? Let's just present it.
This is when you say, can I find you a seller to get your referral agent?
Yeah. I've got an agent that you should call, right? Yes. What else? 2 more ahas and then we'll do action items. Yes.
Would you like to be the house that sold? Or would you like to be the house?
Yeah. By the way, that right there is why ahas are important, because that wasn't a point that was made anywhere by up here. Was Sarah bringing that up from before? This is why we ask ahas, because the aha you had wasn't even from today, which is, that's the purpose though. Like, that's the purpose. That's great. One more aha.
Well, I think that what this is also, it's important that you as an agent then go home and you have to ask yourself, am I an agent who's advising people to stay in the status quo of what we're seeing, or am I an agent who might walk away from more clients, but I'm gonna do the book of business that's gonna sell? Because I guess we're also victim to, well, this is the new market, we'll just reduce pricing. Maybe this will make you go, ooh, that's not how I wanna, as an agent, I wanna be. I don't wanna be that, the false market. I wanna be the right market. And I have to figure out better skills to get more leads to overcome maybe walking away.
It's just a lot easier to have a listing that sells in 7 days as opposed to having a listing that sells 78 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's think about the amount that don't ever sell.
Right.
24%.
24% will never sell.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a big number.
What happens if your house doesn't sell?
Right.
That's right.
What's your game plan?
That's even more crazy.
Correct.
And that's the harder conversation because 3 years ago, we weren't having that conversation at all.
No.
Right.
No. Some of you in here are still like, what the heck's an expire?
Right.
Tyler.
Going back to, you know, our dollar per hour, but also considering how many other listings could we put on the market and sell for realistic numbers
Yeah.
in that 70 days.
100%.
The greatest, yeah, right, to her point, the greatest gift you'll ever give to yourself as an agent when you get to the point where you say, everyone is not my client.
Everyone is not my client. And how are you able to do that?
You have enough leads.
You have enough leads. You have enough leads. I was yesterday, Sean Rawls, my team leader, he's like, do you know why this pisses you off so much? I was like, yeah, because you're an idiot. And he's like, no, it's because it's the only seller you have. So, oh, aren't you kind, right? All right, action items. What are you gonna do with this? What are you gonna do with this? What action items can you take?
Figure out how to convey the message, and even if you don't give it, you don't overwhelm people with 300 pages,
No.
you get them to say, I wanted to learn more, and then
Yeah.
you get into more conversation, but convey the message in the medium you got comfortable. I was speaking about this in the beginning. We do a lot of messaging all over social media all the time. Make sure you're not just fluff, that you're also becoming someone who drops a couple of such intelligent stats. When they're through watching the skit you're doing, they'll remember you also decided to talk about real estate.
Yeah.
But give them something that's not about you, it's about that. I
Yeah.
think that's how you get smart about your conveying the message.
As simple as a call to action, like do this. Just go put on Facebook right now. Over half the homes that sold in the Q4 of 2024 sold in 7 days or less. Would you like to learn how that happened? It's funny you ask, Mr. Seller. Right? All right. 2 more action items. Yep.
For me, the negotiation penalty conversation.
Yeah.
I've used a lot of this data for a long time because I'm a data nerd too, but that's new for me and I can't wait to use it.
Yeah, that was my big one.
Jay's coming out guns a-blazing. You can set more appointments right now.
That is similar line, updating my listing presentation. I would lead with this before I lead with my market analysis.
Here's why I'm explaining this to you, is I don't want you to have the negotiation penalty. All right, one last exercise, because here's what you can do with this. Here's why there's such an opportunity for this discussion right now. I want you to take out a piece of paper and write 2 numbers down. And if we did this briefly on Wednesday, it's always good to hear again, but if you did hear it, like, I love that you know the answer, but let's give it some time. Give some time if you haven't heard this before. All right, first number I want you to write down is 24 million. $24 million, yes. Yeah, $24 million.
Goats.
Yep. The second one is 13 million. Right, okay. Give it a second if you know right away. Does anybody know what those 2 numbers represent? Okay, hold on. Not from the other meeting though, right? Anyone who was not here on Wednesday know what those numbers represent? Okay, what do they represent? Kyler.
The volume for listings and buyers.
It's the GCI for listings and buyers. $24 million in GCI income in KW Charleston in 2024 came from buyers. So 24 million came from buyers. 13 million came from sellers. Okay. So where should that be?
It should be the other.
If you wanted to run a healthy organization, where should that be? 50-50. Okay, so if it were 50-50, what should the listing income have been? Don't answer if you know.
24 million.
Anybody else have a different answer? 18.5. Okay, so in order to balance it, you want to give away some buyer commission to get seller commission? No, it should be 24 million and 24 million. Right? So there's an $11 million difference. What we call an opportunity gap, right? Lost opportunity. That was $11 million worth of commission in our organization alone that we did not get because it wasn't balanced. Why did we not get it? Why did we have that many more buyers than we did sellers?
Because where's the seller gonna move it?
Okay, so that's saying where's the seller gonna go? What else? What's the other reason?
Didn't take advantage of the 2-for-1 as a listing.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
For every seller you get, you should get a.
I know where you're going with that, and yes, you're correct, and we're gonna explain that a little bit more. Yes, sir.
Maybe there were, many new agents who were more focused on buyers.
That's the correct answer in a more global way. The simple answer is because someone else had the listing. You didn't get the listing. We didn't get the listing, right? Hey, read through it. Some of you are like, well, no, all these certain things. What did every single one of those buyers buy? A house. So it's not, it doesn't have anything to do with the market. Now, and I can already see some of you, well, new construction. Okay, new construction may fluctuate that by 5%. Okay, so there's only 9 million available out there. But you see where the opportunity is? The huge opportunity around there. One of our main goals, if we're being honest, if part of our mission statement is for you to build businesses worth owning, a business worth owning is a balanced business. And if we're not helping you build a business worth owning, then we're out of integrity on that contract that we've had with you to do that. So one of our main missions from the education committee this year is to balance that. Because it's all it is education. The listings are there. You're not gonna go create more listings. The listings are there. Does that make sense? All right, how was today? Yes.
Excellent. I definitely appreciate this, because everyone says this is a skilled market, but they never define the skill. It requires, so appreciate you guys breaking this down.
Absolutely, 100%.
And to that point, when we look at those numbers, this has to do with, again, it's people, it's stories, right? And it has everything to do with activity as well as skill set. So when we see a differentiation of $11 million in listing income to buyer income, what does that tell you? It reflects the activities and the skill set of the mass. So how do you fix that? Well, you fix that with training, right? And consulting and understanding and being aware of what the data is telling us. Does that make sense?
So I'm going to push on you guys a little more as a former educator, because people learn differently, and it was great. And some of us will walk out, and then there's gonna be those who are kinesthetic learners that want a class that will actually demonstrate how they incorporate this in their listing presentation.
Got it. And that is the deliverable is so what we talked about on Wednesday is these events are to identify where that next step in actual training is, right? This is a presentation. This is not training, right? This is a presentation. Training comes is when we sit down with the education committee and say, okay, in the next listing class, how do we incorporate this into actual conversation with them? So 100% we'll be delivering on that.
You can add that to a value stored, like a value stored workshop,
Yeah.
essentially, it would be like the action, like the data we actually mentioned that they.
And just as a former teacher, people have to actually practice it and do it.
Yeah.
To make sense.
God, if only we had a thing called Ignite.
Yeah, we just need to have more on the training calendar, 100%. Okay.
Everybody here.
What?
Glad it's back.
Tell you what, it is good to see you here. All right. We got a lunch sponsor, Kelly with K-Hog is here. If you don't mind, going to grab her really quickly. She's just to talk for a couple minutes and we'll have lunch and then that's it. Was this helpful?
Yeah.
All right. We're done. Yeah. All right, Kelly's gonna come in, she's got about 45 minutes to present and then we're gonna take lunch. Same jokes.
Thank you for what you did bring today and that we now can do what we want with it because we're agents. So thank you for all this time. And I'm not just saying that because you did it. This
True story.
If you're smart, you'll figure out what your book of business is and then pick the slides that most apply to that. So it's a little bit on us as well to be the agents we've already been learning to be. And thank you guys for giving that to us for free.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Kelly. Hey. Kelly, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I know you guys are ready for lunch, I'm sure, so I'll try to make this quick. I'm with K-Hog Indian Homes. We call it K-Hog for short. If there's any question on the pronunciation. How many of you guys have been to one of our communities before? Awesome. Have you sold in one of our communities before? Even better. Well, I don't know if you guys know this number. Do you have any idea how many of our deals have a buyer's agent on them? What would you guess?
32%.
80%. So you guys are by far the best business partners We have the product, you have the buyers, and we can't do this without you. We are always gonna pay for a buyer's agent. It varies by community, so it's gonna be anywhere from like 2.5% to 3%, but just know we are always gonna compensate you guys for your efforts, because we can't do this without you. You bring us the bulk of our business, so thank you. So I was at Liberty Hill Farm, so if anybody was out there, they know me from Liberty. I recently just opened a community in Beaufort, which is interesting because I have sold 3 homes in the last week to people from Mount Pleasant and Ravenel. So we are seeing this migration, because Beaufort prices are a little bit lower. And I'm in a waterfront community that's beautiful. I mean, I have 2 communities, they're both on the river. It's the same product from Liberty Hill Farm, just slightly modified. And it's about $600,000 less.
Wow.
So there's a lot of incentive for people to drive across the bridge and go, it's still the low country. So don't discount Beaufort. I would say, please come visit my community. At Liberty, we're like in the final stretch. There's about 15 home sites left in phase 2B. Our amenities are done. If you guys haven't been out there, we opened in the summer. And then our final phase is only 35 home sites. So like there's less than 50 left in Mount Pleasant. We have long build times. That hasn't changed. You're still looking at 12 to 14 months for a build time out there. But we've got inventory homes available that will start closing like in springtime for your buyers. Pricing there is 1.1 to, we've got homes on the Hamlin Sound, so we've sold homes for over 2 million. It's just going to depend. It's the Wando and the Hamlin are by far our most popular floor plans out there if you've been to Liberty. 4 Seasons, which is our active adult 55 and over product. They are opening, they have like 275 more lots coming. They're going to have a new model park. They are going to the looks. We have these designer curated looks packages that are gorgeous. If you guys are ever in Beaufort, come see my model. I'm telling you, you will be blown away. It's absolutely stunning. And they will have the same design packages that I'm currently selling in Beaufort. The pricing, I think, is going to stay the same. We've got Stoneham Village is coming in Ravenel, Hollywood. It's brand new floor plans. We've never sold those in this market. They will have some ranches and 2 stories. Again, it's going to be the looks designer packages that are gorgeous. I think the pricing there is going to be like in the 600s. So we have some new stuff coming down Kiowa area-ish. We've got some stuff coming in Ravenel. So we've got lots of new things up and coming. So if you go to our website, it's just khob.com. Go to the Charleston market, go to the Beaufort market, and you'll see like communities that are coming soon. So you can register for information. You can register your buyers for information. So it's just a great source to keep you guys in the loop because sometimes they publish updates there that they haven't told us in the field. So, but that's really all I wanted to say. Please, come see us. It's the easiest transaction you will ever have. You just bring us the buyer. We do the contracts. We do all the follow-up. We do everything. So you can go back to working all your other people in your pipeline and selling more homes. So we love partnering with you. And I hope I get to see all of you guys at one of these communities soon. So Camellia Banks is on Ladies Island. And then overlook at Battery Creek is in Beaufort, right beside Islands of Beaufort. Yep.
So the one you mentioned that was in Ravenel, is that 4 Seasons or is that KHO specific?
It's not gonna be age restricted. It's called Stoneham Village.
What's it called? Stoneham Village.
Stoneham Village is the name. I mean, it's on the website. It says coming soon. The model is under construction right now. Actually, they just walked the model last week. So I know they're tracking for a spring opening out there.
Do your agents work community to community or community specific?
We are community specific. That's a good question. I know some builders are changing that model. Honestly, I cannot imagine being in multiple communities. We have to know too much. So my hat's off to those agents that do it.
Awesome. Thank you again. Let's go ahead. All right, guys. Grab lunch, hang out. Thank y'all for being here. We will send these out this afternoon. So you'll get them in a folder. You just have to download them so then you can use them yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You so much. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I have to run because I have a contract appointment.
Okay, well, good for you. That's awesome.
I know, it's got a crazy
I
morning.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Slowly building.